Hello there, and welcome back to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we are going to go somewhere that no sunlight has ever touched. Somewhere so dark that darkness itself feels like an insufficient word for it. Somewhere so quiet that the only sounds are the slow creaking of the Earth's own crust and the impossibly gentle movements of creatures that have never seen light, never felt warmth, and never needed either. We are going to the bottom of the ocean. Not the ocean as most people imagine it, not the blue-lit shallows where coral grows and fish dart through warm water. We are going much farther down than that, past the point where sunlight fades, past the point where pressure would crush a human body without protection, past the point where most scientists, until very recently, believed that complex life could not possibly survive. We are going to the deep ocean, the last great wilderness on Earth, a place that covers more than half the planet's surface and remains, even now, more mysterious than the surface of the moon. Tonight, where are you listening from? Is it late where you are? Is the room dark and still? Then you already have something in common with the deep ocean tonight. The darkness, the quiet, the sense of a world settling into rest. So let your body grow heavy. Let the weight of the day begin to lift. And let's go somewhere few human beings have ever been. Let's begin. The ocean covers approximately 71% of the Earth's surface. It holds 97% of all the water on the planet, and it is, by volume, the largest living space on Earth. Yet, as of today, scientists estimate that only about 5 to 10% of it has been explored with any meaningful detail. The moon has been mapped more completely than the ocean floor. Think about that for a moment. We have detailed charts of a barren rock 250,000 miles away in space. We have sent probes past the edge of the solar system. We have photographed the black hole at the center of our galaxy. And yet the floor beneath the water that covers most of our own planet remains, in large part, unknown. The ocean is divided into zones, each one darker and more extreme than the last. The sunlight zone extends from the surface down to about 200 meters. This is the ocean most people picture: warm, lit, familiar. This is where coral reefs grow and dolphins swim, and nearly all the ocean life that humans have ever directly observed makes its home. Below 200 meters, the light begins to fade. The twilight zone stretches from 200 meters down to 1,000. Sunlight still filters here, but dimly, in pale shafts that grow weaker with every meter of depth. By the time you reach 500 meters, you are in a world of perpetual blue-grey dusk. By 900 meters, you can no longer distinguish day from night. The ocean above you is simply a slightly less dark shade of black. Below 1,000 meters, the midnight zone begins. Here, there is no light at all. None. The darkness is absolute, total, and unbroken except by the cold blue flickers of bioluminescence, living light produced by the creatures themselves. The temperature here is a few degrees above freezing. The pressure is several hundred times what you feel on the surface. And yet, life persists. Below 4,000 meters, the abyssal zone stretches across the deep ocean floor, a vast flat plain of sediment and silence covering more area than all the world's land surfaces combined. Deeper still, in the narrow trenches carved into the ocean floor by the movement of tectonic plates, lies the Hadal Zone, named for Hades, the Greek underworld. It is in the deepest of these trenches that our journey tonight will take us. The deepest point on Earth is called Challenger Deep. It lies in the Mariana Trench, a scar in the ocean floor in the western Pacific, south of Japan. At its deepest measured point, it descends to approximately 11 kilometers, 11,000 meters, nearly 11 miles straight down. To understand what 11 kilometers of water means, consider this. Mount Everest, the tallest point on Earth's surface, rises to about 8.8 kilometers above sea level. If you took Everest and placed it at the bottom of Challenger Deep, its peak would still be more than 2 kilometers below the surface of the ocean above. The pressure at the bottom of Challenger Deep is approximately 1,090 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. Every square centimeter of your body would be subjected to a weight equivalent to roughly 100 kilograms. Without a specially engineered vessel, the human body would be crushed instantly and completely. Not slowly, instantly. The temperature at the bottom hovers between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius. The water is so cold that metabolism slows to a fraction of its surface rate. Time itself seems to move differently in the deep. Slowly, deliberately, with the patience of something that has been waiting for a very long time. For most of human history, the deep ocean was a matter of pure imagination. Ancient civilizations knew the sea was deep. They could see that. They could sail across it and watch their ropes run out before they found bottom. But what lay down there was unknown, and the unknown has always been populated by the things humans fear most. Sea monsters, krakens, leviathans, the great coiling things of the deep, borrowed from nightmares and placed on the edges of old maps. The first serious attempt to understand the deep ocean began in the 1870s, when the British research vessel HMS Challenger spent nearly 4 years circling the globe, lowering ropes to the sea floor and bringing up whatever they found. The scientists on board were astonished by what they discovered. Life everywhere. Even at the greatest depths, there was life. Strange, pale, alien life, but life nonetheless. The Challenger expedition essentially created the science of oceanography, and when the deepest point in the Mariana Trench was eventually measured and confirmed, it was named Challenger Deep in honor of that pioneering ship. But knowing a place exists and actually visiting it are different things entirely. The first human beings to reach the bottom of Challenger Deep descended not in 2019 or 2012, but in 1960. Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh, a Swiss engineer and an American naval officer, climbed into a submersible called the Trieste and spent nearly 5 hours sinking through 11 kilometers of darkness. They spent just 20 minutes on the bottom before sediment disturbed by their arrival clouded their window, and they began the long ascent back to the surface. They reported seeing, through the port window, what appeared to be a flatfish resting calmly on the sea floor. Life at the very bottom of the world. Then, for more than 50 years, no one went back. It was not until 2012 that the second human being descended to Challenger Deep. He was James Cameron, the film director, whose obsession with the deep ocean had led him to finance and pilot the construction of a specially designed solo submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. Cameron made the descent alone, spending several hours on the sea floor collecting samples and recording footage. When he surfaced, he described the bottom as a barren lunar landscape, desolate, alien, and very, very still. 7 years later, in 2019, a retired naval officer and private explorer named Victor Vescovo descended in a submersible called the DSV Limiting Factor and set a new depth record. He reached 10,928 meters, the deepest any human being has ever descended. He spent 4 hours on the bottom, and what he found, even in the deepest place on Earth,
was both astonishing and deeply troubling. Among the sediment and the strange creatures of the Hadal Zone, he found plastic waste, a plastic bag, candy wrappers, the marks of the surface world carried down by ocean currents to the deepest point on the planet. But Vescovo was not done. Over the following 3 years, he returned to Challenger Deep 15 more times, bringing with him a remarkable series of passengers whose presence at the bottom of the world made history in quiet and profound ways. In 2020, he brought Catherine Sullivan, a former NASA astronaut who had walked in space during the Space Shuttle era. Sullivan stepped from the submersible at the bottom of Challenger Deep and became the first person in human history to have both orbited Earth in space and stood at the deepest point in the ocean. She had touched both the highest and lowest accessible points of the known world. The full vertical range of human experience, from orbit to abyss, held within a single human life. That same year, Kelly Walsh descended to the bottom of Challenger Deep. His father, Don Walsh, had been one of the 2 men to first reach the bottom in 1960. 60 years later, the son followed where the father had gone. In 2022, Dr. Dawn Wright, a marine geographer and scientist, became the first black oceanographer to reach the bottom of Challenger Deep. She described the experience as profoundly humbling. She said the darkness down there was unlike any darkness she had ever experienced. Not oppressive, not frightening, but somehow generous, as if the deep ocean was offering its silence freely, without judgment or demand.
While Vescovo was making those dives, China was building its own deep ocean program. The country launched a submersible called Fenduzi, meaning the Striver, which descended to Challenger Deep in 2020 and reached a depth of 10,909 meters. In the years that followed, Fenduzi continued to make regular dives into the Mariana Trench, collecting rock samples, photographing seafloor structures, and cataloging life forms at depths where almost nothing was expected to exist. In the autumn of 2025, the results of laboratory analysis on rock samples collected by Fenduzi from the floor of Challenger Deep were published, and they rewrote what scientists believed they knew about the geology of the deep ocean in that region. Scientists had long assumed that the rocks at the bottom of the Mariana Trench were ancient, very ancient. The oceanic crust beneath subduction zones like the Mariana tends to be old, dense, and heavy, which is precisely why it sinks. Geologists expected to find rocks dating back hundreds of millions of years, perhaps to the Jurassic period or beyond. The samples from Challenger Deep told a different story. The basalt rocks collected from the deepest floor of the trench were between 17 and 34 million years old. Geologically young, almost startlingly so. The analysis suggested that the floor of Challenger Deep had been completely renewed in relatively recent geological time by a magmatic hotspot, a plume of heat rising from deep within the Earth's mantle that had melted and replaced the ancient rock with new material. The bottom of the world was younger than anyone had expected. In geological terms, the deepest place on Earth had essentially been reborn within the last geological eye blink. In the twilight zone, between 200 and 1,000 meters, the creatures that inhabit the eternal dusk have evolved remarkable adaptations to make use of the limited light available to them. Many have enormously enlarged eyes, designed to gather every possible photon in a world where photons are precious. The barrel-eye fish has transparent fluid for a head, and its tubular eyes rotate to look directly upward through its own skull, searching for the silhouettes of prey against the faint light above. Many twilight zone creatures are dark-colored on their backs and light-colored on their undersides, a form of camouflage called countershading that makes them nearly invisible against the lighter water above when viewed from below. Life in the twilight zone is fundamentally organized around the faint glow of the surface, the memory of light.
even when light itself is too dim to be useful. Every night, one of the largest animal migrations on the planet takes place in silence and near total darkness. Trillions of small fish, squid, and crustaceans collectively ascend from the twilight and midnight zones toward the surface to feed on the plankton-rich waters above. Just before dawn, they descend again, retreating from the light back into the darkness where predators cannot follow them. This migration happens every single night, everywhere on Earth, in every ocean simultaneously. It is the largest migration by mass that occurs on the planet. More biomass moves vertically each night in the ocean than moves horizontally across all the land surfaces of the Earth in any comparable period. And until relatively recently, we barely knew it was happening. In the midnight zone, below 1,000 meters, bioluminescence becomes the primary language. It has been estimated that more than 75% of all living organisms in the midnight zone are capable of producing their own light. Cold light, created not by heat but by chemical reactions within specialized cells. Blue-green light, the wavelength that travels furthest through water. Light used to attract prey, to communicate with potential mates, to confuse predators, and in some cases for reasons that scientists have not yet fully understood. The anglerfish carries its light on a modified spine that grows from its forehead like a fishing rod dangling a bioluminescent lure. The light attracts small fish and crustaceans, which swim toward the glow and into the anglerfish's enormous inward curving teeth. The teeth are designed to prevent escape. Anything that enters the mouth cannot back out. In the midnight zone, where food is scarce and encounters with prey are rare, the anglerfish cannot afford to be gentle. But the midnight zone is not only a world of predation. The vampire squid, despite its name, feeds on marine snow, the constant rain of organic particles, dead organisms, and waste material that drifts downward from the surface. It is one of the least aggressive creatures in the deep ocean, a slow-moving, deliberate animal that spreads its webbed arms to collect particles from the water, processing them with a kind of quiet patience that feels almost meditative to observe. Marine snow falls through the entire water column, from surface to floor, carrying carbon from the surface world down into the deep. It is one of the ocean's primary mechanisms for sequestering carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When phytoplankton at the surface photosynthesize, they absorb carbon dioxide. When they die, they sink. As they sink, they become marine snow. The carbon they absorbed at the surface is carried down, sometimes to the sea floor, where it may remain locked in sediment for millions of years. This process, called the biological carbon pump, is one of the most important regulators of Earth's climate. The deep ocean quietly absorbs a significant fraction of the carbon dioxide that human activity releases into the atmosphere each year, softening what would otherwise be even more rapid changes to the climate. The deep ocean is not merely a passive repository. It is an active participant in the chemistry of the surface world, working in darkness and silence to maintain the conditions that make life on the surface possible. In 1977, a research vessel was exploring the Galapagos Rift, a section of the ocean floor in the Pacific where tectonic plates pull apart, creating fractures in the Earth's crust. Scientists on board lowered a camera to the sea floor, expecting to find the cold, dark, empty plain they had come to associate with the deep ocean at that depth. What they saw instead would change biology forever. Around vents in the sea floor, from which superheated water was pouring at temperatures of several hundred degrees, there was life. Abundant, extraordinary, improbable life. Clams the size of dinner plates, tube worms 3 meters long, waving gently in the thermal currents. Crabs picking their way across pale bacterial mats covering every surface. Shrimp clustered in dense colonies around the vent openings. None of these creatures depended on sunlight. They were entirely independent of photosynthesis, the process that underpins nearly every food web on the planet's surface. Instead, they were powered by chemosynthesis. Bacteria at the base of the food chain used hydrogen sulfide pouring from the vents to produce energy, just as plants use sunlight. Everything else, the tube worms, the clams, the crabs, the fish that visited from the surrounding darkness, either ate the bacteria directly or hosted them within their own tissues. These hydrothermal vent communities were the first known ecosystems on Earth that were entirely independent of solar energy. Their discovery expanded the definition of life so dramatically that scientists immediately began reconsidering what was possible elsewhere in the universe. If life could thrive in the total darkness, extreme pressure, and chemical toxicity of a deep ocean hydrothermal vent on Earth, then perhaps life did not require the comfortable, temperate, well-lit conditions that we had always assumed were prerequisites. The implications for the search for extraterrestrial life were immediate and profound. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, is believed to have a liquid water ocean beneath its icy surface, kept liquid by tidal heating from Jupiter's immense gravity. If hydrothermal vents exist at the bottom of Europa's ocean, and there is reason to believe they might, then the conditions for chemosynthetic life, similar to what we find in the deep ocean on Earth, may be present there as well. The deep ocean had shown us that life finds a way, not metaphorically, chemically, biologically, and stubbornly. In the darkest places imaginable, life finds a way. The creatures of the deep ocean are among the most remarkable organisms on Earth. They have had millions of years to evolve under conditions radically different from those at the surface, and the results are extraordinary. The giant squid was, for most of human history, a creature of mythology as much as science. Ancient sailors returned to port with stories of tentacled monsters that could drag ships beneath the waves. For centuries, scientists could only study their existence through the occasional carcass washed ashore or found in the stomach contents of sperm whales. The first photographs of a living giant squid in its natural habitat were not taken until 2004, and the first video footage was not obtained until 2012. They can reach lengths of up to 13 meters and have eyes the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes of any living animal, designed to detect the bioluminescent flashes of the predators that hunt them in the deep. The sperm whale, their primary predator, is itself an extraordinary creature of the deep. Despite breathing air, sperm whales can dive to depths of over 2,000 meters and remain submerged for up to 90 minutes, using specialized physiological adaptations to manage the enormous pressure and oxygen demands of such dives. Their clicks and codas, used for communication and echolocation, are among the loudest sounds produced by any living animal. In the deep ocean, where visibility is zero, sound is sight. Below 2,000 meters, the fangtooth fish possesses, relative to its body size, the largest teeth of any fish in the ocean. Despite being only 15 centimeters long, its teeth are so large that they cannot fit inside a closed mouth. The fish navigates the deep with its jaws permanently slightly open, a silhouette of threat in the darkness, waiting for the rare and precious collision with prey. The barrel-eye fish is transparent. Its entire head, the fluid-filled dome above its eyes and brain, is made of a transparent tissue that allows the large barrel-shaped eyes inside to rotate and look upward through its own skull. The fish was known to science for many years, but it was not until 2004, when deep-sea cameras captured it alive and undamaged in its natural environment, that scientists discovered the transparent dome. Specimens brought to the surface had always arrived with the dome collapsed, making it invisible, and had given the impression of a fish that simply stared blankly forward. The deep ocean continues to yield new species with remarkable frequency. In January 2025, a new species of giant isopod was formally described from specimens collected in the deep waters off Vietnam. Named Bathynomus vaderi, after the Star Wars villain Darth Vader, its helmet-shaped head bears an unmistakable resemblance to the iconic mask.
It can grow to 30 centimeters in length. It is a scavenger of the deep floor, feeding on the bodies of dead animals that drift down from above. And it is capable of surviving for months without food when prey is scarce. That same year, scientists working in the deep waters of the Southern Ocean described a new species of carnivorous sponge. Sponges, most people assume, are the simplest and most passive of marine animals, filtering microorganisms from water that passes through their bodies. This species does not filter, it hunts. Shaped like a small sphere covered in tiny hook-like structures, it captures small crustaceans and other invertebrates that brush against it and digests them slowly. It was found at a depth of approximately 3,600 meters. The Ocean Census Initiative reported in 2025 that more than 800 new marine species had been formally described in that year alone, with the majority coming from deep-sea environments. A survey of the Nankai Trough off Japan's coast in June 2025 found deep-sea biodiversity levels 5 times higher than previous estimates had suggested. The deep ocean is not the barren wasteland that early explorers imagined. It is one of the most biodiverse environments on Earth. We simply have not been looking. The deep ocean is not silent. This surprises most people. The image of the deep as a place of absolute quiet is pervasive, and in one sense, it is accurate. There is no wind, no surf, no birdsong, no sound of rain on leaves or traffic on roads. The deep ocean has none of the sounds we associate with living on the surface of the world. But it has its own sounds, and some of them are very strange. Sperm whales click. Blue whales produce long, low, extraordinarily loud calls that can travel thousands of kilometers through the deep sound channel, a layer of water at certain depths where the speed of sound reaches its minimum and sound is refracted back into itself, allowing it to propagate across ocean basins. Blue whale calls have been recorded on the opposite side of ocean basins from where the whales were singing. The ocean is a medium for communication at scales that dwarf anything on land. In 1997, NOAA hydrophones monitoring the deep Pacific recorded a sound so loud and unusual that it could be detected across the entire ocean basin. Scientists called it the bloop. It was approximately consistent with the sounds produced by a very large living organism, but was far louder than anything any known animal could produce. For years, it remained unexplained. The bloop was eventually attributed to ice quakes, the cracking and fracturing of large Antarctic icebergs. But for a decade, it stood as a reminder that the deep ocean contains sounds whose sources we cannot always identify. The ocean, at depth, holds acoustic events that we are only beginning to catalogue. The ocean floor itself produces sound. Hydrothermal vents hiss and rumble. Submarine volcanoes groan. Tectonic plates grinding against each other produce seismic waves that travel through the crust and into the water. The deep ocean is geologically alive, a system of immense, slow forces expressing themselves in sounds that most human beings will never hear. We have a tendency to believe that the age of exploration is over, the age of maps drawn with sea monsters at the edges. We have satellite imagery of the entire planet. We have GPS and submersibles and remotely operated vehicles and acoustic mapping systems. And yet the ocean floor remains, by any honest assessment, profoundly unknown. The best maps of the sea floor are assembled from acoustic measurements taken by ships passing overhead. They are reasonably accurate in their broad contours, the shapes of ridges and basins and trenches, but their resolution is limited. Features smaller than a few hundred meters may not appear at all.
Vast regions of the ocean floor have never been sampled directly. The great abyssal plains, covering more area than all the continents combined, have been visited only at widely scattered points. The deep ocean regulates the Earth's climate. It stores enormous quantities of carbon. It drives currents that distribute heat and nutrients across the entire planet. It hosts ecosystems whose relationships to the surface world are complex and not fully understood. Decisions about deep-sea mining, fishing, and resource extraction are being made with incomplete knowledge of what they would disrupt. The deep ocean is not a resource waiting to be used. It is a system that has been running, quietly and effectively, for hundreds of millions of years, doing work that the surface world depends on without knowing it. Every species we have not yet found is a piece of a puzzle whose picture we cannot fully see. Every geological process we have not yet mapped is a variable in a planetary equation we are still learning to write. The deep ocean is asking us to be humble about what we think we know, and to be patient about what we have not yet discovered. Those were the most relaxing facts about the deep ocean, and now the water above you grows lighter, degree by degree, as we rise back through the layers. Through the abyss, where Bathynomus Vaderi picks its slow way across the floor, and ancient vents breathe heat into the dark. Through the midnight zone, where bioluminescent creatures write their cold blue messages to each other in a language older than words. Through the twilight zone, where the barrel-eye fish watches through its transparent skull for shadows against the faint glow above. And back to the surface, where the stars are out and the night is still, and the ocean is dark and quiet beneath them. Somewhere beneath you, the deepest water in the world is doing what it has always done, cycling carbon, moving heat, sheltering creatures that have never seen the light, holding secrets that scientists are only now beginning to coax into the open. The ocean does not rush. It does not need to. It has been here for nearly 4 billion years and has learned the particular patience of something that knows time is generous. You can borrow a little of that patience tonight. Let the weight of the water settle over your thoughts. Let the darkness below be gentle. Let the cold, slow, profound quiet of the deepest place on earth seep into the edges of your mind. The deep ocean is still there, right now, in the dark. And it is not empty. Sleep well. Science for Sleep will be here when you return.